I am currently focusing on voice in my Silver Skies 1996 version. And I find that the biggest mistake I made when I did rewrites to my Silver Skies novel in 2008 is I botched the voice. And voice is very, very important, especially in my works. And I one thing that I did write in the 1990s, and I did it by accident, was that I wrote a very compelling and consistent third person to omniscient point of view with my Silver Skies novel. And the reason I did it right by accident is because I was trying to do third person limited. I'm currently reading a book called Writing Voice, and it's very good on the subject of voice. And I found a chart in there that I found really interesting and helpful. And here's the chart. So let's go ahead and use it for Silver Skies 1996 version. Lori's dropping bombs, and it's giving me sore throats and stuff. So I've got a lot of gunk in my throat from all the germs, the yeast germs, and those bombs. So just excuse me. Let's start with, here's the chart. Let's start with Silver Sky. I'm writing two books at the same time because it's a series, so I have to plan both books to make sure the series works. It's Silver Skies 1996 version and Silver Skies the Millennium. So let's start with Silver Skies 1996 version, which is set in pre-tribulation and tribulation Earth, according to Bible prophecy. Is the story primarily about how your character changes throughout the novel? My main point of view character is Dora Benebacuk, and I would say yes. So let's go up to the next question. Is your character completely competent and or able to tell his or her own story? He's kind of like a blend between Brent Spiner and me, so yes, because both Brent and I are very competent in it. Okay, so we'll go to yes. So now, does your character have access to all the information you plan on revealing in the plot? No. That's why I have two other point of view characters in there. Brianna Wilhelm and a private detective new agey character, Franz Wilhelm. So the answer is no. So the next question, are other characters and their experiences needed to reveal the full scope of the story? And that is yes. So it says try third person omniscient. And that's exactly what I did. Let me tell you what I knew. I figured out. You may say, how could you not know that you were writing in omniscient? Let me tell you, point of view is one of the hardest things for a writer to master. It's in writing any novel. And but the reason my third person omniscient worked is because I thought I was writing third person limited. Because what I would do is I would only go inside one character's head at a time in the scene, but sometimes I would pull back so much that I would give a God's eye view of his world. And in so doing, I was actually going into omniscient point of view without even knowing it. But it worked. And I only pulled back when it was necessary to pull back. In other words, I didn't just do it just to say, hey, I'm writing a God's eye point of view. For omniscient to work well, it's kind of like you've got the narrative voice, which is the voice of the narrator telling the story, and that may or may not be a point of view character. And when you're writing omniscient, it's he, she, it, they. That's how you write it. But you can pull in, you can really go inside the character's mind and just stay there and not even go out. Like if when you're like if you're saying the earth was filled with turmoil in the year 2000, that is omniscient. That's God's eye view. You're really pulling back and giving a broad overview. Third person limited would be like Dor saw thunder streaking across the sky and he felt terrified inside and he felt like the whole world was going crazy. So that's third person limited. Okay, you're inside the character's mind and you're not pulling back and doing a God's eye view. Third person limited is not, it's a little bit more complicated than that. But what I would do in Silver Skies is I limited each scene to one point of view character, but sometimes I pulled back. And the way I did it was excellent because my narrating voice was consistent. It was a kind of a deep philosophical voice with courage, a courageous, transparent, deep philosophical voice. That is my typical narrating voice. And what I did in my rewrites, which really butchered the deep philosophical voice, and fortunately for me, all of my point of view characters in Silver Skies are kind of deep and philosophical. I've got a new agey character. They're just deep and philosophical in different ways. So I have a new agey character who goes deep into new age thinking. And then I have Brianna Wilhelm who goes deep into Christian thinking. And then I have my Dor Ben-Habaka character who goes into Jewish thinking. He's a rabbi. Being a rabbi, it's perfectly consistent with the voice to make him philosophical because most rabbis are philosophical. So it works perfectly for the story. So what I would do is when I would, using my omniscient voice, like if I was in Brianna's point of view, she's more courageous and direct than Dor. So it's when I'm in her voice, I need to make sure to bring that out with a sentence structure and everything. But the point is, let me tell you how, just give you a perfect example how I botched it. In Silver Skies, I opened the book with Rabbi Dor Ben-Habaka followed the rules of his religion and married a woman out of duty, something along that line. That sucks. That's how I opened it. I thought, good night. It's no wonder when I submitted this book to the agents, none of them responded. I mean, it's like, there's nothing. And then when you go down to the rest of the page, it's like it's trying to leap. That's not really philosophical. You're just flat out telling the reader the story instead of allowing them to experience the story. When you're writing a good, when you've got your point of view nailed and your voice nailed, the writer experiences the story. It's like, I don't even, first of all, the best way to use omniscient voice is to try to limit it to one character per scene. And then when you pull back, because you don't want to spend a whole paragraph describing the world's turmoil, just get a telling detail. And I find what works for me is to blend the narrator voice, the God's eye voice, with the character voice in the scene and make them kind of like overlap each other so they don't seem, so there's no harshness. I don't know how to describe it. So it doesn't seem like, the better way to open that scene would be the way like I did it. The woman of Dor's dreams was looking out at the sky and her hair streamed in the sunlight. See, okay, right there, you've got a philosophical deep voice. I'm true to the voice. That's omniscient point of view, but it works. And then you could say, Dor felt loneliness creep over his heart as he watched his dream woman. That works. That works because you're in his mind. And the omniscient point of view works because it seems like it's an extension of Dor's point of view. So you can blend seamlessly from the omniscient to the point of view character. And I agree with Jack Bickham setting where he says that if you're going to use omniscient point of view, it's best to try to make it third person limited and only use the omniscient when you have to, because the omniscient can say it better than the third person limited, or maybe you want to save space. So it's more complicated than this. I highly recommend you get the book. I'll have a link to the book underneath this video. And this chart that I'm using in this video comes from the book, and it's very helpful. So according to the chart, I should write Silver Skies in third person omniscient. And the author of the book says this chart, or the one who says is not a cure-all, but it's just help. Use it as a tool, but realize there will be exceptions. Okay, now let's go to, so third person omniscient works, except, and another thing with omniscient point of view is the voice needs to have, it's almost like you're creating your own character when you're doing third person omniscient. You've got, your voice needs to almost have, you almost need to do like the voice needs to be its own personality, and it needs to be consistent. the sentence structure, the way it expresses itself, the cadences, the nuances, all of that. So if there's an inconsistency to the omniscient narrator, it won't work. It has to blend in seamlessly with the point of view characters in each scene, and they have to complement each other. They can't clash. And that's the problem that I had when I did the rewrites in 2008. I'd forgotten craft, and I butchered voice. So you say, does that make a difference? Well, I first started learning how to write by writing screenplays. So in my writer's voice, I have a lot of dialogue, because I did dialogue very well because I first started out with a screenplay. So the thing is, it's more complicated than this, but I highly recommend this book, Writing Voice. Okay, let's go on to my next book. So Silver Skies, the Millennium. We'll start with this chart again. Is the story primarily about how your character changes throughout the novel? I'd say yes and no. I've got a new main character or protagonist for Silver Skies, the Millennium. He's kind of like a blend between ex-Antichrist Zack Knight and Brent Spiner. I don't feel like I can have a Zack Knight character to carry the whole book because Zack Knight presents himself somewhat shallow. He's not shallow, but he presents himself that way. So I'm going to lose some readers saying, I don't care what this person thinks. He's a male chauvinist, sex pervert, So I thought I got to give him a little depth to make him the main character. So he's going to be like a blend between Brent Spiner and Zack Knight. Okay, I would say no. So is the story primarily about how your character changes throughout the novel? I would say no. Okay. Is the story equally about changes to your character and to the character's community or world? I would say yes. Does your character live to the end of the book? Wait a minute. Wait a minute. No, I goofed. Okay. Is the story equally about changes to your character and to the character's community or world? I would say no. It's about how the character changes, but the world changes are very important. He's in the millennium, and he's going to actually play a major role in changing the world around him. So no, is the character's inability to tell the story part of the story or subject matter? And I would say yes, because he's going to be kind of like Zack Knight, but he's going to deny a lot of his deep side. So yes, it's best to use third person omniscient for Silver Skies, the Millennium. So that is my best point of view going by this chart. And I also came to that conclusion myself. You see, imagine Wuthering Heights told from the point of view of Heathcliff. It just wouldn't work. Nobody would want to read it. They'd say, ugh, this guy's too hateful. He's too vindictive. Emily Bronte was smart to use another narrator to tell the story of Cathy and Heathcliff in Wuthering Heights. And the same would be true in The Great Gatsby. Jay Gatsby was a shallow character. If he was the point of view character, it wouldn't work. So because I have an anti-hero in Silver Skies, the Millennium, it's best for me to use omniscient so that I can kind of use like layered narratives where I'll have like my deep philosophical, courageous, transparent voice giving insights into, his name is Urban, by the way. I thought that's an appropriate name. Into Urban to show why and how he changes throughout the book and goes from shallow to deep to courageous, transparent. So he starts off kind of like Zack Knight, and he ends up being kind of like Zack Knight and Brent Spiner combined. But he also plays a major role in transforming the millennial world around him. So in that respect, Silver Skies, the Millennium has a lot of parallels to a high fantasy book like The Lord of the Rings. So I'm working very hard on my book, and my inspiration is The Lord of the Rings by Tolkien. And I bought the book for Christmas. Thank you, my Patreon supporter, for giving me a Christmas present so I could do that. And I'm also using it to buy a vaporizer because I've been getting sore throats from air so dry and full of yeast. So anyways, I'm excited about this book. I'm going to try to match The Lord of the Rings.